Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our virtual Lunch and Learn. My name is Jeff Wallach. I'm with Senate Wallach Technology Group, and today we are presenting one of our newest solution providers that we just recently onboarded together, Abnormal Security. And so our Lunch and Learn is going to be to learn about transforming security with Abnormal. Abnormal, just to give you a brief background, they are a email security platform that helps detect threats and also various types of email attacks, if you will, and takeovers that could potentially look good to the users within your email system or corporate environment, but possibly could be trying to compromise and take some information or data or money or things like that through just bad email exchanges. So without further ado, let me go ahead and talk a little bit about Senate Wallach Technology Group for those of you who are not familiar with us. We've been around now going on 17 years. We are a solution provider and we provide solutions that people trust. Our focus really is on network management and information security products and services from best of breed solution providers out there today. Here's a list of some of the partners that we have, and some of you are customers of ours for a long period of time that I see on the line with us, and we appreciate that. And we again are continuously looking at technologies and solutions to bring to you information and valuable products and services. Lunch is on us, so everybody that's attending today will receive a $25 Grubhub e-gift card after the webinar's over. So be on the lookout for that in the next day or so. And also, what we're also going to be doing is for the first proof of value, people that want to learn and put this product, Abnormal Security Solution, in their environment, testing it out, seeing what kind of what information it can bring to you and detect and help you prevent any type of malicious email attacks in your network. The first 5 proof of value folks that we engage with will also get a $150 Amazon gift card. So one more thing I just want to say, if you have any questions, we will be taking questions and answering them after the presentation. So please put your questions in the Q&A box. I'll also try to monitor chat, but I'd rather it be in the Q&A box if possible. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Laz Macias with Abnormal Security. Laz is a senior solutions engineer here in the South Florida area, and he's going to be doing the presentation and demo about Abnormal. So Laz, I'm going to stop sharing and you go ahead and take over.
Okay, Jeff, a quick mic check. Everything coming across loud and clear?
We can hear you great.
All right, phenomenal. Hi everyone, welcome. This is a great partnership with Jeff and team. We wanted to take just a few minutes today and over lunch really discuss the email trends that we're seeing, some of the more advanced email attacks that we have been experiencing or identifying here with any customer that we typically do business with. What does make Abnormal very special or unique in the market? As you can imagine, email security is a lot of different providers out there, very well-known brands and different technologies in general. But the concept of a lot of these email attacks that we're seeing, the more advanced type, are still getting through, are still landing on the inbox. Our end users are still clicking on things, opening attachments. Doesn't matter how much security assessment training we do. Oftentimes, they're still falling victim to some of these more advanced attacks. As a method of introduction, my name is Les Macias. I am the local sales engineer based out of Miami, Florida. I cover the entire Southeast. I also do a lot of partner activities such as the one that we're performing here today, but wanted also to introduce, at least in a couple of slides and pictures here, the rest of my sales team, some of the key individuals in different parts of the region that are happy to help answer any questions or set up any follow-up demos, anything that you need from the Abnormal team. We're definitely happy to do so here moving forward. I'd like to first introduce Gina McCarthy. She is the South Florida Enterprise Account Executive working directly with me. Any particular conversations or questions that you may have, and you're based out of the South Florida area, Gina will be your main sales contact for Abnormal. If you're part of the central or north part of Florida, Jeremy Fry is our enterprise account executive that will handle your account and answer any questions as well. And then finally, Chris Cadora is going to be our SLED account executive. I will provide some of those emails and contacts for the team in the last several slides or two. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to Jeff. He's happy to broker the conversation between us and your organization. But team, let's go ahead and get started. And, as we look at some of the transitions away from, years ago where we had on-prem servers, you had your Exchange on-prem, you had, a variety of controls that you owned and managed that provided the proper security here for your email platform several years back. That has, of course, transitioned from an on-prem deployment out to a more cloud-based service, which is what typically a lot of our customers have today, right? They have some sort of presence within Office 365. They're maybe using Google Workspace as their email platform, et cetera. And the goal there is, the shifting to the cloud has also, kind of shifted the attacker strategy in a way, where they're now using a variety of more advanced types of attacks. This is what we call the modern attacks that are typically harder to catch because they don't have the typical signals that something like a email gateway would look for, maybe a bad link or a bad attachment. They're strategically designing some of the more advanced email attacks that are socially engineered driven, right? And these are the ones that are more impactful. These are the ones that cost organizations into the millions. And it happens, of course, if they get breached with a variety of different, lack of visibility, of lack of detection when it comes to these more modern attacks, right? And I'll show through this conversation, what are some of these examples? What are some of the more advanced attacks? Why are they still becoming very successful? Even though there's a variety of controls, both provided by the Microsoft and Google suite, but other email security providers. But oftentimes we still find with every customer conversation that we have that a lot of these email attacks are still getting through, right? And the concept with Abnormal is we want to bring to the table a very unique method of identification, right? Our efficacy, of course, is one of the highest in the market. We're focused on behavior analysis to be able to understand not only the bad attacks, right? We definitely want to catch those, but first understand your business. Understand what are normal email transactions, normal email communication within your environment, maybe some communication internal, maybe vendors and partners that you do business with. We first try to establish that normal email activity and then highlight and detect at a greater efficacy level any potential email attacks that are the more egregious or the more advanced that are harder to catch in the more traditional way. What are some of the breakdowns? Well, socially engineered email attacks are definitely on the rise. They're very, very successful. You see a variety of interaction with customers in that second section here with potential vendors that get compromised, right? Third-party supply chain, third-party organizations that you may do business with, that oftentimes a lot of our customers can confirm or validate the email maturity implementation that some of these vendors have as they conduct business with them. And these are the ones that are very difficult and very interesting methods of identification, simply because if you have a vendor that you do business with and suddenly they get compromised, they're being used to launch an attack against your team or organization. How do we catch it, right? How do we validate it and confirm that this is a vendor that has been taken over? It's one of the core use cases that Abnormal here solves moving forward. Of course, any type of account takeover, right? These are the ones that are, people still falling victim to phishing attacks. People are clicking on links, they're typing in their credentials everywhere. What happens when an account has been taken over, right? They're launching a series of internal attacks that do not necessarily go through an email gateway. This is all east-west traffic that traditionally Microsoft would not necessarily deliver the amount of signaling that's needed to say, hey, this account is compromised. They're launching an internal series of attacks. Let's stop it, right? And then, of course, impersonation of a variety of different controls and systems and automated systems that you typically see. They're spoofing their way into landing on the inbox, things that we want to be able to generate some visibility around. And the team maybe have seen, oftentimes we see from the FBI, their report was recently released a few months ago. They're confirming and validating that business email compromise or any type of, vendor compromise or any interaction that's potentially causing your organization money by via of a variety of fraud initiated transactions or payments that are being made to ransomware attacked organizations. These are all numbers that continue to grow in the amount of loss that some of these business email compromise use cases are generating. And it is indeed a very profitable business for the bad guys, something, of course, that we want to be able to stop in any way, shape, or form. And I'll give you a quick example. There's a local company down here, roughly about 25,000 mailboxes. And we connected to their environment in what we call a POV or a proof of value or a POC, where we wanted to gain visibility to some of the email transactions that we were identifying. Within the first month, we noticed a variety of vendors that were emailing the system, trying to change or trying to make some sort of fraudulent request to redirect funds to the bad guys. And I'll give you one example specifically. This is one that we've caught and we were able to stop, where someone was impersonating a construction company that this current customer was using in order to work on a new project, a new building that was being generated. And the bad guys generated or created a domain that looked almost identical to the actual vendor that they were doing business with. I think it was either a difference of a dash or a number on the domain, but they were able to get to the procurement team and the finance team requesting payment, right? And this invoice was roughly $112,000 that the bad guys were trying to get payment for, redirecting it to a new account. Invoice fraud continues to be that number one case. And we picked up the phone and called this customer because we said, listen, this is something that we need to stop, right? These are the ones that we've identified. Here's the bad email that came across. Here's the lookalike domain. And we share with the customer all the details on what was it that we identified during that POC process. And we were able to win that deal just simply by stopping one of the more egregious types of attacks that falls in the category of business email compromise, and stopping an invoice for $100,000+ to be paid out to the bad actors, right? One of many examples, right? We have thousands of these use cases that we typically highlight over email, but of course, this is one of the ones that falls directly into what the FBI is tracking here from a monetary loss perspective. As we look at, why is this so difficult to catch? Why is this continue to be a problem in any environment we talk to? Business email compromise has a lot of higher ROIs compared to the other cyber attacks, right? If they can convince someone to either make a payment or whether it's an invoice or maybe payroll fraud or gift card fraud or a variety of others, these are very profitable for the bad guys. So they're continuing to changing their strategies in order to ensure that they can land on the inbox and socially engineer their way into a huge pay date, right? And team, remember, some of these emails do not have anything malicious to latch onto. No bad links, no bad attachments. These are socially engineered. They're trying to convince the user to take some sort of action, something that is very, very difficult to catch with existing or traditional controls. Their focus, speaking of traditional controls, their focus is always and continues to be chasing the threat intel, the known bad, the bad links, the bad attachments, etc. There's little or no contextual visibility over normal email communications, the behavior analysis, the tone and the sentiment of the emails themselves. These are things that traditional defenses do not necessarily focus on. They're always chasing the bad links and the IOCs or the bad attachments, right? We want to look at that. We want to look at also a variety of thousands of signals. I think it's 65,000+ signals that we analyze in order to come down with a verdict that says this is without a doubt an attack in the environment. But how is it that, traditionally, what's the typical focus? What's the difference, of course, between what you may be aware of or know of what an email gateway is in the environment? There's a lot of big players in the market that are email gateways. And as you can imagine, a lot of these traditional tools require a lot of configuration, a lot of architectural demands, especially around rerouting MX records to a different location. They're going to inspect and reroute every message over to an email gateway for inspection. And at the end of the day, when you look at some of these types of inspections, they have not changed over the year, right? If you're looking at an email gateway 10, 15 years ago to what they are today, yeah, they've enhanced little capabilities here and there, but they continue to be a threat intel, a signature-based detection, an IOC-heavy type of inspection that oftentimes we know and we still see from a lot of our customers and their validation that things are still getting through, right? You have to maintain it. You have to create a lot of policies and rules around it to make sure that they can at least catch, the large majority of them. But the concept there is, traditionally they're focused on IOC, spam, and gray mail protection. They're not seeing, of course, the big picture on normal transactions and be able to consume a variety of more advanced type of signaling as well. This is a key comparison of an email. This is a real world example of an email that we saw come in where a vendor was compromised, but the email itself had nothing malicious to latch onto, right? And this is typically what a traditional email gateway would look at. They're going to look at the email message, maybe subject, sender, and 2 fields, and say, here's a vendor that we've seen before, that they have communicated with prior, that may have a contract or maybe several invoices have been paid prior, that doesn't necessarily raise any flags. But as you can see, the message comes in and says, hi, Steve, can you confirm a liquidation of X amount, 753,000, which is definitely a large amount of money. The fund needs to be transferred to a new Chase bank account, or can you get this processed immediately, right? But if you look at this message, there's nothing malicious with this message to even start with, right? It has no links, it has no attachments. It's trying to get someone to do something, right? Take some sort of action, look at maybe the invoicing system and change the bank account information, et cetera, in order to redirect those funds to a bad actor. But we notice in this particular scenario, it actually is coming from the real vendor, right? The person that they have communicated with in the past, that doesn't necessarily raise any flags, right? In the right-hand side, we need contextual intelligence. We need to identify, why is this email bad? Have we seen anything change in the structure of the email? What is the relationship that this person had with this vendor that maybe raises a potential change or red flags here moving forward, right? Of course, the visibility that we're detecting is a lot of more advanced types of signaling. The signals, include 65, 70,000 unique signals to determine, is this something that is a malicious email in the environment, right? If you see some of the color coding here, this is what we call natural language processing, right? Is the ability for abnormal to look at and understand what are they requesting? What is the sentiment and tone of the email? Is this something that we've seen before from the vendor or not? Or maybe it raises a variety of flags, right? So in this particular scenario, natural language processing is saying there's a financial request, there's a series of a sense of urgency type of signals, right? Can we get it done today or as soon as possible, anything like that? And there's a large amount of money that they're trying to get some sort of fraud or redirection to maybe a new account. The idea with us is, we're bringing behavior analysis and contextual data that we look at 65,000 plus signals per message to come down with a verdict that says, without a doubt, we see that this particular request is something we've never seen before. The financial or banking details are unusual for this particular vendor or company. That allows us now to come down with a verdict that says, this is without a doubt a series of evidence that the vendor may have been compromised, and now they're trying to use this account to be able to commit some sort of invoice fraud. So team, the idea there is, how are we doing this, right? How are we providing a level of contextual intelligence beyond an inspection of a link or an attachment that is likely different from the traditional methods and controls, right? If you look at the right-hand side, AppNormal is a modern type of integration or architecture, right? We're cloud native APIs, meaning we're connecting directly to Office 365 or Google. We do not change MX records. We do not interfere with email flow. The integration literally takes 30 seconds to stand up. It does not require any policies, any additional configuration. Nothing needs to be done on the customer end to make sure that we can then begin our analysis and provide the right level of visibility. What happens at that point is, we're doing behavior analysis. We're understanding normal patterns of communication. It's funny because we have a large retail provider up in the Northeast that constantly kept on getting emails requesting some sort of merchandise, making, hey, I need such and such device, or I need such and such tool, etc. And these are emails that are coming in by the thousands, right? How do we then confirm that this is maybe a potential reconnaissance email, or maybe someone that is trying to do legitimate business? Part of our identification is baselining that normal activity, right? What is considered to be these transactions that are active and normal, and something that may raise a flag and say, this is definitely not anything we've seen before. That baseline of known good allows us to get very accurate in the inspection, and then be able to extend our visibility to vendors and supply chains and external entities that are conducting business with your organization. Definitely something that we want to be able to profile and understand here moving forward. But at the end of the day, team, we have deep cloud platform signals that we typically use, right? And we keep referencing these signals that are, 65,000 plus. These signals that are considered, not only by the message themselves, right? The email communications, the to and from fields, the headers, the attachments, the probability of message, containing a demand for any type of monetary change, etc. These are all taken into consideration, as well as the user profiling, right? Where the typical users log in from what device, what location, right? If we see some abnormal activities within the user's account themselves, these are things that we can definitely take an action on, and then be able to simplify that account takeover remediation and actions that are taken. But if you look at this section here, the very bottom of the attack spectrum, this is everything that we're detecting. The low-level things like spam, gray mail, things that will likely clutter the inbox. These are things that we want to be able to highlight and shine some light on. We know that thousands of these emails are still landing on the inbox. Therefore, we need a cleaner and easier way to detect some of the more spam and gray mail activities as well. And then vendors that get compromised, we've seen those examples before. Invoice fraud, ransomware, phishing continues to be a very unique or important problem. They're finding a variety of ways to introduce those phishing links into maybe an attachment, such as an HTM or an EML. They're actually hosting some of these phishing URLs or sites inside of a cloud service that's legitimate, right? I just saw this morning where a customer got an email from what seemed to be a Microsoft platform, right? Inviting them to look at and maybe visit a legitimate Microsoft service like OneNote. And within that OneNote document, it contained a phishing site, right? AppNormal immediately detected it. We looked at several layers deep in the URL inspection, and we noticed that URL was taking the end user to a different location, which is indeed a phishing website, right? But the strategies are constantly changing. The methods that are traditional and what we're used to seeing on every customer environment are not effective anymore. We definitely need to have that level of visibility from the behavioral standpoint alongside the threat intelligence, right? So it's providing a visibility of the best worlds, right? The tool of the best worlds in inspection there moving forward. And now, how do we integrate? What type of requirements are really needed? The idea with this particular side is, regardless if a customer has any type of email gateway in place today, right, which is a scenario A, have Office 365 as your email platform, or maybe Gmail, and there is an email gateway that's maybe doing the threat intel or the known bad attack type of protection, we can still provide and connect to Microsoft Office 365 and provide visibility over the more advanced attacks, right? Since we're doing this via API, we do not change MX records. We do not interfere with email flow. We're simply connecting to Microsoft directly to see what are the things that are still getting through, things that individuals are clicking on, vendors that potentially get compromised, our end users replying back to a variety of these bad attacks. Want to make sure we catch those as well. As well, in comparison, scenario B tells, well, if we don't have an email gateway in place, right? And this is, a lot of our customers rely on Office 365, the Defender plans, Exchange Online Protection. Whether you're on E1, E3, or E5, we can definitely assist in the process of inspection where we can still connect to Microsoft and also identify these more advanced attacks. And team, the concept there is an email gateway, including Microsoft, will definitely focus heavily on threat intel. We're bringing that behavioral or known good attack protection that hugely complements any one of these scenarios to ensure that nothing gets through, to ensure that the more advanced attacks are detected, something that our behavior analysis allows us to accomplish. And then, of course, if we look at, and I'll take some questions here before we jump into a quick demo, the approach that we see from email security in general. And as I was reading some of the market guides on email security, a variety of recommendations provided by Gartner requires that phishing continues to be a huge problem. The cloud to email migrations opens the door towards reevaluating the email security controls that any customer has within their environment, right? And the idea there is who can catch, right, the highest amount of some of these more advanced attacks that we want to be able to highlight in every integration or every inspection that we do. And then, of course, if you look at, that report highlights a variety of different approaches that are kind of confirming what Abnormal is doing, right? An API-based integration that's easy to deploy. I'll show you here in a second. Literally takes 30 seconds to get off the ground. It allows us now to call the APIs from Microsoft and Google and now provide a very unique method of ensuring that you're not only detecting some of the more advanced attacks, but also simplifying the architecture in a way that oftentimes an email gateway rerouting, of course, some of the MX records or email flow can be a little bit complex to manage and maintain. The API structure allows us to simply get to that value, get to that detection of these more advanced attacks faster than probably any other capabilities or solutions out there, right? So team, what I'll do is I'll take 30 seconds and I will cover a quick demo of the platform. And something I typically highlight in every conversation is how do we integrate, right? What is the process to maybe start a POC or a proof of value? Jeff mentioned initially, having the ability to, deliver maybe a Amazon gift card, right? If you can get a POC or a proof of value off the ground with your organization, that's definitely something that we can easily do. And if you were to tell us, yes, we definitely want to start today. We want to do some of these inspections or maybe just have some visibility over the emails that are still bad sitting on the inbox, we're happy to do so, right? And the process is very simple. We're going to request for a POC, read-only access to something like mailbox data, and then read-only access to something like the user profiling details, normal activity for the users, where they typically log in from, et cetera. These are all the data that we're combining together to do the behavior analysis that we know about. If you hit next here to authorize, what it'll do is we'll log in with Office 365 credentials. An enterprise series of application permissions are listed here for the enterprise app. It's read-only access to everything. Once you hit accept, this is the extent of the implementation, right? There's nothing else that needs to be done. There's no additional configuration, no rules to create, no changes to MX records. This is a very simple process to start. And the product itself, we're going to do a 35 to 45 day look back in order to really understand the environment, allow the system to really understand the known good. And then 7 days from the integration, we're going to sit down and we're going to demonstrate or show what we call a cybersecurity assessment report for email. It's highlighting all the more advanced attacks, what we're finding within the environment, some of the things that we're catching that a lot of the traditional tools are not. But this report is a very valuable proposition of, hey, it's a good time to look at and maybe take into consideration a behavioral data science type of inspection instead of 100% relying on just threat intel and signature-based detection type controls. The goal there is once we have a fully built report, you'll be able to see some examples of advanced phishing, of business email compromise, impersonation attempts, malware, and ransomware that's still landing on the inbox for our users. But the entire spectrum of communication, these are things that we want to be able to highlight and cover on any conversation as well. So in order to see some of the additional controls, I'll show you briefly some of the dashboard, some of the the existing findings that we see within any environment that we connect to. The top dashboard here, this is a trend of email attacks daily that are detected by abnormal, right? If you look at this list in the example of May 12, credential phishing continues to be that #1 use case. It still lands on the inbox for the users. There's roughly about 449 email attacks that we see just one day here on May 12th. But also it includes a variety of more advanced attacks, impersonation attempts, invoice fraud, malware, extortion, etc. Some of these that are very, very different or difficult to catch are the ones that we're highlighting there as well. If you look at the section there, that this is actually the entire list of detections that we can do for practically any customer. Doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter the vertical. We're simply turning on our behavior analysis to understand, what are the normal patterns and highlighting those bad emails, which includes the low-level things like spam, gray mail, some of the visibility around just the noise in the inbox, magazine subscriptions, maybe that a lot of users don't want to see, etc. Those are the ones that are low-level detected. But again, some of the more advanced types of attacks, the ones that are maybe payroll-driven, right? These are the ones that are impersonating an employee. They're emailing the payroll department saying, hey, I need you to do me a favor. Can you update my direct deposit information? And they're delivering a new account in order to, of course, redirect payroll or direct deposit, money to a bad actor's account. Phishing, of course, we talked a little bit about that, heavily focused on credential phishing detections as well, but also extortion, malware, ransomware, the entire spectrum of those email attacks that are very common to see in any environment. But then we look at what are these more advanced socially engineered types of email attacks, right? The ones that are difficult to catch, the ones that are impersonating a series of executives saying, hey, I need you to do me a favor and buy a couple gift cards for my executive team. Or I'm sitting here with a vendor, there's an invoice that needs to be paid out. Can you pay it to a new account, right? And they're finding ways to strategically create an email to land on the inbox, to not necessarily have anything bad to latch onto, right? No bad links, no bad attachments. It's as simple as a plain text email that has no links, no attachments, and is directed at those strategic group members or team members in your organization to make sure that they can socially engineer their ways into a variety of use cases or attacks, primarily monetary gain, right? Some sort of fraud as well. So at the end, we have the last example here is the email account takeover use case. This is one that we see often, that oftentimes is very difficult to identify, right? And it's putting a variety of signals together to be able to tell the story. What happens when a user sees a link? It's a phishing website. They click on it. They visit the site. They type in their credentials thinking it's something legitimate. And now their account can be potentially compromised, right? The bad actors will do anything possible in order to land on the inbox, in order to maybe launch an internal series of attacks, maybe have a variety of different actions that can be taken internally that traditionally are very difficult to catch, especially they're sitting blind behind an email gateway because these emails are internal. East-west traffic doesn't necessarily go through an email gateway for whatever reason or no reason at all. And it happens to be a very internal to internal type of email attack, right? This is where we can now identify these level of amount of email account compromises, any internal attacks that are launched, be able to auto remediate some of these accounts. Or if we know that a user is showing signs of suspicious activities, we can take an action on the account and maybe do a sign out of all the active sessions, do a password reset, or even just allow the user to regain access to the account by the method of auto remediation to ensure that the bad guys are kicked out, right? And the user can regain safely access to their account. I did want to take one small example here from one of our controls that we typically highlight. And this is one of the details where if you look at the structure of the message, right, the structure of the message and the way that we're doing our detection is fundamentally very different from the traditional methods. We'll take a phishing example here, for instance, right? We have a series of controls, a series of examples, a message comes across, lands on the inbox for the user. And in this particular scenario, something like a Zoom meeting, right? Hey, join now, here's a Zoom meeting invite. Go ahead and click on this link and access the Zoom call or whatever the case may be. What happens in this particular scenario is if you look at the content of the message itself, right, there's no links. The link looks legitimate. There's nothing malicious to latch onto, and there's no attachments, right? But if you look here on what we, look at the inspection of the links themselves, in this particular scenario, we have a phishing website that has been strategically designed to impersonate or look like a Microsoft or Zoom authentication in order to fly under the radar and not necessarily be detected by the traditional controls, right? This is a newly created, never before seen URL that highlights the ability to land on the inbox and then look as legitimate as possible to the login from Microsoft or any other authentication page. Oftentimes, the bad actors will inject a username to make it easy for the user, right? Hey, Mr. User, we've put in your username already as part of the authentication. Go ahead and type in your password, right? And at that point, this example of phishing is one of the ones that are very difficult to catch. There's never before seen URLs are not easy to look at or maybe confirm that is indeed malicious. But then how do we then allow abnormal to provide a series of additional signals, some additional validation that is different, right? We're looking at a variety of signals, right? We're looking at how often does this particular domain or account email the system, right? That behavior analysis, prior communication, methods that are easily validated to confirm, is this an unusual sender or is this someone that has communicated with us in the past, right? We're inspecting the body, the attachment, the headers, thousands of these signals together to say, hey, we've noticed that there's something strange in the email at the body. There's a series of text or spaces with a size 0 that is not very common for normal email communication, something that is observed on email attacks often, right? And then, of course, we see a variety of unusual IP location, the domain reputation. Is it a newly created domain? Where are they emailing the system from? And it shows that, hey, this email IP address that was generated comes from Bulgaria that we've never seen before for this particular domain, raising a variety of additional questions, right? And then, of course, at the end, it says, hey, there's without a doubt a suspicious link in the body of the message. We recommend auto remediation, right? But the core concept here and the key differentiation with abnormal is abnormal in this particular scenario is looking at 44,000 unique signals to come down with a verdict that says, without a doubt, this is a credential phishing attempt. We're going to give it an attack score of 97 or above, but we also recommend auto remediation. Pull the message away from the inbox, place it somewhere safe that we don't necessarily allow the user to see, and it proactively eliminates the probability of the user opening the message, clicking on a link, or even opening an attachment, something that may raise a risk or a potential threat to the organization here moving forward, right? So team, I'll pause here. Jeff, if we can take any questions or comments that are coming in, definitely will be a good time.
Sure. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. There is one that says, okay, I have Proofpoint. How would I have to replace Proofpoint, or can they work together with Abnormal?
Yeah, so if you have a Proofpoint deployed today, we're happy to work together with Proofpoint today, right? We can easily integrate, we can easily provide some additional visibility behind a Proofpoint that can highlight the behavior analysis inspection that we see that are still getting in, right? These email attacks that are still landing on the inbox for the user. These are things that we want to be able to highlight. Whether you have an email gateway, whether you have Microsoft as your email security inspection tool, to us, doesn't really make a difference, right? We want to connect via the API and provide the proper visibility over the more advanced attacks, specifically the ones that are still landing on the inbox, right? And the way that we do that, if you look at this particular slide here, this is a recommended risk assessment, right? Whether you have an email gateway or not, having the ability for us to be able to integrate within under 30 seconds, be able to show a no risk level visibility that shines the light on some of the more strategic types of attacks, and deliver a report to your team that says, hey, what else are we seeing that it's not being caught traditionally? This is the huge value that Abnormal brings to the table. Either way, we work with or without an email gateway, but the value that our product brings is the unique differentiation there.
Okay, that was the one question I had. And again, whoever has questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box.
Yeah, and I see, Jeff, another question here that came across. Do you integrate or whitelist any phishing simulation providers? So we definitely do. The idea with us is, if a company, which is very common to see nowadays, that they are delivering security assessment training, they're delivering a series of phishing simulation campaigns, all part of that process of educating the user, we are, of course, whitelisting, or we are integrating with a lot of these companies to make sure that if anything gets reported, if anything gets generated as a phishing simulation campaign, we're not interfering with that particular flow, right? We know who the phishing simulation provider is. We're not going to interfere with those campaigns that are legitimate and sent out. However, one of the key capabilities that we have with one feature that we call is Abuse Mailbox is, if you're allowing your team, right, your employees, to report messages in, and these reports can be delivered to a phishing at your company or maybe in any other location, what Abnormal allows us to do is almost re-inspect those messages again, right? The ability for us to not only inspect what's reported, come down with a verdict. If something is indeed malicious, we're going to take an action and auto-remediate that message, move it away from the inbox into a hidden folder, and also reply back to that reporter, like that person that submitted the email. We're going to reply back to them and say, hey, thanks for reporting this message in. It is indeed a malicious message. Thanks for keeping the company safe. But the goal there is, this is a huge time-saving proposition where your team doesn't have to look at every message that gets reported. We're doing all the inspection, we're doing the auto remediation, and we're doing the reply backs to the reporter, saving your team time without having to look at every message that gets reported in. As a matter of fact, we've had customers where they had full-time employees dedicated into analyzing every message that gets reported. We have been able to save thousands of man hours by automating that process of inspecting the messages and be able to take an action as well.
And then there's another question, Laz. Does this have any DLP capabilities?
Yeah, the DLP is one of those questions that we typically get a lot. The outbound and inbound protection, typically DLP looking for sensitive data, looking for, whether it's PII, PHI, PCI information, et cetera, is something that, from an outbound security perspective, it's not available in the product just yet, right? This is one of these many hundreds of requests that we're typically getting from customers, that we don't have up to the moment any DLP capabilities, but it is on the roadmap for Q4 of this year, right? And the idea there is, we want to be able to provide a method to do DLP in a little bit more of an advanced contextual way, right? What that's going to include is, your traditional looking for credit cards and PII and sensitive information, but be able to understand the environment, look at prior communication, include a variety of intelligence beyond regex and maybe the basic DLP, to get very, very accurate in the inspection of any outbound messages. But it is something that we're working on towards the end of this year. It is slated to be a Q4 type of release.
Okay, got another question. Once you have identified a malicious email and removed it from the user's inbox, do you have the ability to scan across all mailboxes for a similar threat to reduce the email blast radius before a user has the time to take an inappropriate action?
Yeah, phenomenal question. The idea with us is, every time we do any type of inspection, we're looking at hundreds, thousands of emails, and the unique signals with each. The idea with us is we're correlating and connecting the dots on what a potential campaign will be that maybe it is targeting your organization. So for instance, I see phishing emails that are constantly changing. They're changing the subject, the sender, the body of the emails, etc. But the goal with us is we're doing campaign-wide detection and remediation. So if we catch one message or 10 or 50 or 100, we're correlating all of these data points together to tell a story. And the story is, here's a series of email attacks. Here's an entire campaign. They're targeting 50 users, 200 users. And once we do the detection, the auto remediation eliminates or takes an action on all the messages across the entire tenant, right? We're ensuring by this campaign remediation that you don't have any lingering messages out there, that we're not doing partial remediation, which is very common with a variety of security tools. We want to make sure that based on the analysis that we've done and the signals that connect the dots together between these emails are things that we're correlating together to do that campaign-wide inspection. So it doesn't matter if we see one message or 200 similar messages that have a particular pattern. We want to make sure that we can combine these together to make sure that we don't have any lingering messages out there that need some sort of remediation. We're doing this as a campaign.
Okay, great. That's all the questions we have so far. And Gina wants to remind everybody that once, if you do a proof of value or a proof of concept, you're going to show the emails that are landing in the inboxes that are being bypassed by your current email security measures like Proofpoint, Microsoft, etc.
Yeah, and the final part there, team, is we wanted to show, and if you maybe want to take a picture of the email contacts, we have Jeremy Fry, you have myself, you have Chris Cadoro, you have Gina McCarthy. Their email and contacts are listed here. If you definitely want to reach out to Jeff and have an additional follow-up or maybe a conversation on maybe a deep dive demo or maybe the architecture in general, we're definitely happy to do so at any given moment. What I did want to highlight on the right-hand side is we are a cloud-native email platform. We are API-based. We're designed from the ground up to catch the more modern email attacks. We're protecting a variety of Fortune 100 companies. We have mailboxes. I have customers that are 20 mailboxes. I have customers that are 600,000 mailboxes. Companies like Royal Caribbean, companies like Johnson & Johnson, Liberty Mutual, Mass Mutual. You have hundreds of customers that are the larger enterprise focused that we also, of course, want to be able to assist and help in this email security journey. But as well, if you have a smaller environment, we're definitely happy to provide the abnormal detection difference there as well. And then, of course, we are a strategic Microsoft partner. We're part of the Microsoft Intelligence Security Association, the MISA program, which is an early stage a partnership with Microsoft that allows Abnormal, which we're the only email security provider in that program or system, that allows us to get a deeper relationship with Microsoft, be able to do co-selling with them, be able to get access to a series of newly released features, etc., that create that robust integration between us and Microsoft, which is definitely a better together story. And they are pushing our product very well in a variety of accounts and regions. So I'll leave with that. Any questions you have for me, any type of follow-ups, any demos that you want to be able to get some visibility around, we're happy to do so. The Abnormal team, you see some of the folks there, including Jeff and his organization. We're happy to continue the conversation in any way, shape, or form.
And Laz, we got another question. What is the process for retrieving any false positives?
Yeah, false positives are. A false positive is one of those questions that we typically get often, because we know the email security space is probably experiencing a lot of these false positives in any conversation that we have. I looked at a series of dashboards that we have, and this is something that we keep track of from an efficacy standpoint. We're looking roughly at the last dashboard highlight here shows the false positive rate for Abnormal is 1 message per 1 million messages inspected, right? And that one message could be something like gray mail, could be something like spam, something that doesn't have enough intelligence to say, this is bad, falls into the category of potential false positive. But you can submit the false positives over to us. The behavioral models are designed to auto adjust depending on anything that's reported over to us, anything within the console that you're flagging as a potential false positive. But I'll give you this example. Local customer here in South Florida, 25,000 mailboxes. They're seeing millions of messages come across every single day. In the first quarter of this year, between January and let's say March, they submitted one false positive the entire quarter. And we analyzed it, and we came down with a verdict that it was a gray mail email that was coming across, nothing that was going to be a risk to the organization. But we fine-tuned the models accordingly to make sure that in Q2 we don't have any. And up to this point, we have not seen a false positive in that customer environment. Very active environment, very large, a very large recognized organization. But the goal with us is we're using so many signals, or we're using so many data points in order to come down with a verdict that the false positive rate is almost non-existent, right? And the idea with us is we're not relying on a link, we're not relying on an attachment or even an IP or originating country. We're looking at hundreds and thousands of these signals to make sure that when we come down with a verdict, it is an accurate verdict that this is indeed an email attack in any environment.
Another one, here we go. Repeat the metrics ratio again, please.
The matrix ratio right now is 1 message per 1 million messages inspected. So if you turn that into a percentage, Jeff, it is very, 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 very rare to see.
Okay. Well, that's it for so far for all the questions that we have. And I want to thank everybody. Laz, I'm going to just share again my screen to remind everybody that lunch is on us. So you folks that have attended, you will be receiving from us a $25 Grubhub gift card, and asking for also feedback on the webinar we did today. And then, as we said before, anybody that's attended that engages with us and does a proof of value, proof of concept, will also be eligible for a $150 Amazon gift card. So thank you again. We will be reaching out to everybody that attended. I know this is lunchtime, so that's why we are offering you some lunch so that we can basically hopefully make up for you guys missing lunch, but hopefully the information that Laz presented was worth it. And thanks everybody for attending. Thank you, Laz. Thank you, Abnormal Team.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody.